The hidden truth. The newsroom was unusually quiet that Monday morning. Screens glowed with half-written headlines, and the smell of burnt coffee filled the air. Clara Reynolds sat at her desk, tapping her pen against a notebook full of unfinished stories. For weeks, nothing exciting had come her way, only small articles about city events, charity dinners, and weather updates. It wasn't what she had dreamed of when she joined the Metropolitan Times. She wanted something big, something that mattered. As she sipped her cold coffee, a message appeared on her screen. The subject line read, "You're looking in the wrong places." Her heartbeat quickened. The email had no sender name, no signature, just a single line of text. "If you want the truth, follow Neuralink Industries. Don't trust anyone." Clara frowned. Neuralink was one of the largest tech companies in the country, famous for its brainwave monitoring devices technology, used in everything from healthcare to marketing. She had written about them before, but only the official, polished side of their work. She printed the message and walked straight to her editor's office. "Another conspiracy tip?" said Mr. Walker without looking up from his computer. He was an old-school editor, more concerned about deadlines than drama. "It's about Neuralink," Clara said. "Someone sent me this." She handed him the printout. He skimmed it, sighed, and pushed it back. "Anonymous messages aren't news, Clara. Half of them are crazy. The other half get you sued." "But what if it's true?" she insisted. "What if something's going on inside that company?" Walker finally looked up. His expression softened slightly. "Listen, you're talented, but you're not ready to take on corporate giants. Leave this to the senior staff." Clara bit her lip. "Then give me something that matters." He shook his head. "Finish your article about the local art fair. That's what matters this week." Disappointed but not defeated, Clara returned to her desk. She couldn't stop thinking about the email. Who sent it? How did they know she had been trying to find a serious lead? The words "don't trust anyone" echoed in her mind. That night, long after most of her colleagues had gone home, she stayed in the newsroom, scrolling through recent news about Neuralink. Every article praised their innovation and ethical commitment. Too perfect, she thought. Real companies always had flaws. She opened the company's official website, searching for something odd. Buried deep in the careers section, she found a new department listed as Neuralink Cognitive Research Division. Confidential projects. No public details. No contact information. Her curiosity turned into determination. The next morning, she visited the address listed on one of Neuralink's patents. The building looked ordinary, a grey tower with tinted glass windows. But something about the place felt off. Security guards stood at every corner, and visitors had to sign strict non-disclosure forms. When she tried to enter, the receptionist smiled politely. "I'm sorry, Ms. Reynolds. This area is restricted to company personnel. I just wanted to ask a few questions for a story," Clara said. "I'm afraid that's not possible." As Clara turned to leave, a man in a lab coat passed by. He paused briefly and whispered, "They don't want you here," before disappearing into an elevator. Her pulse quickened again. Back at the office, Clara wrote a short note in her notebook. Who is they? What are they hiding? She decided to dig deeper. Using an old contact from her university days, Leo, a data analyst now working in cybersecurity, she asked for help tracing the anonymous email. He hesitated at first. "Clara, this could be dangerous," he warned. "If you're poking around Neuralink, you're poking a bear." "I just need to know where the message came from," she said. A few hours later, he called back. "You're not going to like this. The email was sent from a server in your own building." Clara froze. "What do you mean?" It was routed through your newspaper's network. Someone in the Metropolitan Times sent it. She looked around the newsroom. Her colleagues were typing, chatting, laughing, just another ordinary day. But now everything looked different. Someone here was hiding something, and they wanted her to find it. For the rest of the day, Clara couldn't focus. The newsroom that once felt like home now seemed full of strangers. Every laugh, every whisper made her wonder who among them had sent that message. At sunset, she packed her things and left quietly, avoiding eye contact. The city was wrapped in cold autumn air, and the neon lights reflected on the wet streets. She walked fast, trying to make sense of everything. If someone from the Metropolitan Times had sent that email, they either wanted to help her or trap her. At home, she opened her laptop again. Leo had sent her a follow-up message. I looked deeper. The email's data trail was deliberately hidden. Whoever did this knows how to cover their tracks also. Be careful, Clara. I think your system's being monitored. Her stomach tightened. She quickly shut the laptop and unplugged it from the internet. That night, she barely slept. Every sound from outside cars, footsteps, the wind felt suspicious. When she finally drifted off, a loud noise woke her up. It came from the living room. Heart pounding, she grabbed a flashlight and walked slowly down the hall. The window was open. The curtains moved gently in the breeze, but nothing seemed missing until she noticed her desk. Someone had left a small black USB drive right on top of her notebook. There was no note, no explanation. Clara stared at it for a long moment before calling Leo. I think someone broke into my apartment, she whispered. Call the police. I can't. Not yet. If I do, this story's over. Clara, this isn't a movie. You're dealing with people who could destroy lives. She hesitated. Or save them, if I find the truth. She met Leo the next morning at a quiet cafe. He brought his laptop, scanning the USB carefully before opening it. It's encrypted, he said. But the files looked like company documents. Internal reports, experiment logs, communication records. I can try to decode them. As he worked, Clara noticed a man sitting near the window reading a newspaper. At first, she thought nothing of it, but when she looked again, he was still watching them. Their eyes met for a split second before he turned away. Leo, she whispered, we need to leave, now. They packed quickly and walked out the back door. Clara's hands were shaking. Someone's following us, she said. They took a long route through side streets before reaching Leo's office, a small space filled with computers and tangled cables. He began decrypting the files again, typing rapidly. Whoever gave you this drive wants you to see something, he muttered. They just didn't want to send it online. After a few minutes, the first file opened. It was a report labeled Subject Testing Phase 4 Cognitive Monitoring Results. Claire's eyes widened as she read the lines. Neuralink wasn't only studying volunteers. They were collecting real-time, brainwave data from thousands of users without consent. She whispered, They're spying on people. More than spying, Leo said grimly. They're manipulating emotions through digital signals. Look, this graph shows how they influence behavior using certain frequencies. Clara took a deep breath. This was the story of a lifetime, but also a dangerous one. Suddenly, Leo's monitor flickered. A message appeared. You shouldn't have opened this. Then the screen went black. Leo cursed under his breath. They found us. I'm disconnecting everything. They left the office immediately, taking only the USB. As they reached the street, Clara's phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed across the screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Who is this?" A distorted voice spoke. "If you want to live, stop investigating. Neuralink is not your story." Then the line went dead. For a long moment, Clara stood frozen on the sidewalk. The noise of the city faded around her. Leo looked at her, pale. "We need to go to the police." She shook her head. "If we do, the files disappear. You know how power works. They'll bury it before the news reaches the public." Leo sighed. "Then what's your plan?" "I'll talk to someone inside Neuralink. A whistleblower. There has to be one." That evening, she went back to the newsroom. Mr. Walker was still there, editing headlines. "Clara," he said, looking up. "You look terrible. Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Just working late." He nodded, then paused. "Be careful what you dig into. Some stories aren't worth the cost." Her blood ran cold. The tone in his voice calm, warning, almost personal, made her wonder. How much did her editor know? Clara left the office that night with 1,000 thoughts fighting in her mind. The way Mr. Walker had spoken, calm, almost protective, yet cold, it didn't sound like a coincidence. He knew more than he admitted. Rain was falling steadily as she walked through the city. Her reflection in the shop windows looked like a stranger wet hair, tired eyes, and a determination she barely recognized. She wasn't sure if she was chasing the truth or running from danger anymore. At home, she opened her notebook and began to map everything out. Anonymous email from inside the Metropolitan Times. USB drive, confidential Neuralink documents. Leo. Helping with decryption. Mr. Walker. Suspicious behavior. Unknown caller. Warning her to stop. One line stood out from the USB report she had read earlier. Test subjects unaware of monitoring process. Memory adjustment under review. Memory adjustment, she whispered to herself. The next morning, Leo called her again. "I cracked the rest of the data," he said. "You need to come see this in person." When Clara arrived, Leo was pale, his computer screen glowing with lines of code and open folders. "There are video files," he said. "Internal experiments." He clicked play. A video showed a young woman sitting in a lab chair, connected to a headset of glowing blue lights. A voice off camera said, "Initiate emotional reset." The woman's expression shifted from fear to calm in seconds. Then another file played, this one labeled Project K. The screen showed a digital form signed by Kay Wallace, Chief Cognitive Engineer. Clara froze. Kay Wallace, the whistleblower. Leo nodded. Maybe, but he or she was part of the project, not outside it. Look at the timestamp. This was recorded just 2 months ago. The next line on the screen read, "Experiment terminated. Subject deceased during neural synchronization." Clara's breath caught. They killed someone. Leo looked at her seriously. "Clara, you have to understand what this means. Neuralink isn't just manipulating emotions, they're rewriting people's mental patterns. And if this gets out, it'll destroy the company, and possibly the government contracts behind it." Before she could respond, there was a loud bang outside the office. Footsteps. Someone was in the hallway. "Hide the files," Clara whispered. Leo pulled the USB from his computer and shoved it into her pocket. "Go," he said urgently. "I'll stall them. What about you?" "I'll be fine. Just go." Clara ran down the back stairs, her heart pounding. Behind her, she heard voices deep, commanding, unmistakably professional. Security agents. She escaped through a side door into the rain and didn't stop running until she reached a crowded metro station. Only then did she catch her breath. Her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the River Cafe at midnight. Kay." Her hands trembled as she read it. Kay Wallace. The person behind the documents, the possible insider. At midnight, Clara arrived at the cafe by the river. It was nearly empty, except for a hooded figure sitting in the corner. "You're Kay?" she asked quietly. The figure nodded. "You shouldn't have come. I'm already in too deep," Clara replied. "Tell me the truth about Neuralink," Kay sighed. "They started as a medical company, but they were funded by government intelligence agencies. Their goal wasn't therapy, it was control. Emotional control through brainwave manipulation. We tried to stop it, but people started disappearing. Why send me the message? Because you still have a voice. The press can expose them if you survive long enough. Why me? Why not a bigger outlet? Because the Metropolitan Times is already compromised, Kay said quietly. Your editor Walker works for them. He's been filtering what gets published. I needed someone inside to fight back. Clara felt a wave of cold run down her spine. So the warning, "Don't trust anyone," wasn't paranoia. Kay shook their head. It was advice. Suddenly headlights flashed outside the cafe. Black cars stopped by the riverbank. Men in dark suits stepped out. "They found us," Kay whispered. "Take the drive. Get out." Kay handed her another USB, this one marked with a red symbol. "Everything you need is here. The truth. The proof. Don't let it die with me." "Wait, what about you?" Clara asked. But Kay was already gone, slipping through a back door into the fog. Seconds later, Clara heard shouting and the sound of gunfire echoing through the night. She ran, clutching the USB tightly. By the time she reached her apartment, her hands were shaking. She knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. She had the evidence, the documents, the videos, the names, everything. Now, she had a choice. Publish the story and risk her life, or hide it and live with the guilt. As she stared at her laptop, the cursor blinking on a blank screen, she whispered to herself, "If truth dies in silence, then journalism means nothing." She began to type. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds of Clara's apartment, but she hadn't slept. Her laptop screen glowed in the dim room, filled with documents, videos, and a half-finished article. The headline read, "The Mind Behind the Machine. Inside Neuralink's Secret Experiments." She leaned back in her chair, exhausted. Publishing this story meant exposing one of the most powerful companies in the country and betraying her own editor. But if she didn't publish, everything Kay had risked, everything Leo had done, would be for nothing. Her phone buzzed. A message from Leo appeared. "I'm safe, but they took my computers. Be careful." At least he was alive. That gave her some strength. Clara transferred all the files from Kay's final USB to a secure server and encrypted them with a password only she knew. Then she sent a single email to her editor. Subject: "You were right. Some stories aren't worth the cost. But this one is." Attached was the finished article, every file, every proof, every quote. 15 minutes later, her phone rang. It was Mr. Walker. "Clara," he said softly, "you don't understand what you're doing. If this goes live, You're not just destroying Neuralink, you're exposing people far more dangerous. I know, she replied. And I'm done being silent. Please, he said, his voice tight. They're listening. Shut it down before it's too late. She hung up. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for one last second. Then, with a deep breath, she pressed publish. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the newsroom's website refreshed. Her story appeared on the front page bold, undeniable, unstoppable. Within minutes, social media exploded. Thousands of readers began sharing it. Major outlets picked it up. Neuralink's scandal became the #1 trending topic worldwide. The truth was out, but so was Clara's name. By afternoon, her phone was full of missed calls from colleagues, other journalists, unknown numbers. Her inbox overflowed with messages, some praising her, others threatening her. The news networks were already showing images of police entering Neuralink headquarters. Executives were being arrested. Government officials called for investigations. Still, Clara couldn't relax. She kept glancing at her window, half expecting black cars to appear again. That evening, she went to meet Leo at a quiet diner outside the city. He was sitting in a corner booth, tired but smiling. You did it, he said. It's everywhere. Clara sat down, finally letting herself breathe. No, she said softly. We did it. Leo nodded. You know they'll come after you now. I know. But maybe that's what journalism is, telling the truth even when it hurts. He looked at her for a long moment. You think Kay made it out? Clara didn't answer. She wasn't sure. The memory of the gunfire by the river haunted her. When she returned home that night, she found an envelope slid under her door. No name, no address, just a single letter inside. It read, "The truth you revealed is only the beginning." Kay. Her eyes widened. Kay was alive. Attached to the letter was a small data chip. On it, one line was written in black ink. Project Genesis active. Clara stared at it in disbelief. Had Neuralink already moved on to something even bigger? Something beyond what she had uncovered? She opened her laptop again, hesitating only for a moment before inserting the chip. A single file appeared. Genesis_report.docx. She clicked it. The first sentence read, following the Neuralink incident, the new prototype has been transferred to an undisclosed facility under international supervision. Her pulse quickened. They hadn't stopped, the project was still alive. She smiled bitterly and closed the file. Of course it is, she murmured. Then she opened a new document. The title line blinked at her. Waiting. Slowly she began to type. The Hidden Truth. Part 2. Outside, the city lights flickered, reflecting off the river. Somewhere out there, the next story was waiting. And Clara Reynolds knew she would find it, no matter the cost.